First of all, I felt really bad. Kieran was one of those characters that I just like didn't pay attention to the whole time I read this for the first time. Just
Yeah,
thought he was like a random person that was going to be there for a couple chapters and then just like fade away. Like, oh, that guy that they hung out with for a while until they split. Like that's kind of
right,
how I thought he was going to be. I was just like, let's just get to like the destination. In my reread, I've realized that Wheel of Time is kind of like a you have to be in the moment sort of thing and just treat
right.
every moment like it's important, which is probably a good thing to do in life in general. So
That's true.
thank
That's
you,
very
Robert
true.
Jordan, for that.
There's so many named characters and named things, and some of them have very minor, almost forgettable roles, but most of them do come back to the story in some ways. It's important not to forget a name, at least like not to write it off, at least I should say.
Welcome to the Great Honey Podcast. I'm Maya, the Amerlin Bee,
I'm Marcelle, the Gleeman.
and this is a show where we talk about all things Wheel of Time. If you're joining us from YouTube, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe, leave a comment so we can chat. And happy episode 10. I think that's cool.
Yes,
We hit the double digits.
we made it. We took a week off last week, but we're back. We're back stronger than ever. But yeah, it's cool to get to this double digit episode.
Yeah, I'm happy about that. Where did we leave off last week in
All
our
right, so
first episode talking about the Great Hunt?
right, I mean, basically we ended at chapter 9 where we learned that our party is going to uh be led, quote unquote, by Ingtar to chase after the horn and Pattern Fain and also the dagger. And so we start off with chapter 10, kind of getting a lay of the land and kind of setting out on this journey where they're actually chasing after Pattern Fain and, the dark friends and the Fades and Trollocs that are with him. So this is kind of where we get our one of these characters. It's kind of a new character that we got introduced to last chapter, but last episode for us. Perrin, who is a sniffer, which is essentially a tracker. I think we explained it last time. He can kind of smell evil or violence and that kind of thing. He can kind of track it. And so a lot of this chapter is him telling Ingtar where the scent or where the track is leading, and he's following Pattern Fain and these dark friends as they, I guess, essentially are moving really at a really high, quick speed, or at least they kind of gather that they're going to run their animals to death at the speed that they're going. And so Ingtar has, Rand, Matt, Perrin, Loyal, and a bunch of the Shinarans with them running at these breakneck speeds, trying to catch up with Pattern Fain to get the horn back. And so yeah, it's going pretty poorly at first, I think, is kind of what we get. They're not really catching up, and Rand keeps, we're in Rand's head in this chapter. He keeps wondering, are the horses gonna like give out? Is this a futile attempt? And he's got a bunch of worries, namely,
Matt.
Matt and Perrin, who still won't talk to him because of him in the previous chapters pushing them away because he thought he had to run. And so this is kind of just starting this kind of is like the beginning of the story a little bit, because we're actually getting into the adventure. But yeah, so this chapter, we get a lot of angsty Rand here. We get a lot of him angry about his clothing, angry about his friends, angry about the Shinarans who don't respect him. They don't think he's worthy of his sword, and they also think that he's an Aiel, or he looks like an Aiel. I think Massima says that Rand looks like an Aiel, and he fought in the Aiel War. Massima did, so he doesn't like the Aiel, and he thinks Rand is one, even though Rand, very angrily protests that he is Aiel. He's not, because he obviously grew up in the Two Rivers, which Matt ends up confirming begrudgingly because he doesn't want any more weight to go to Rand's head at this point. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. How do you think about this adventure kind of be starting and getting into this sort of tracking of the horn and after Fain?
I mean, first of all, I felt really bad because Kieran was one of those characters that I just like didn't pay attention to the whole time I read this for the first time. And I just
Yeah.
thought he was like a random person that was going to be there for a couple chapters and then just like fade away and just
Yeah.
like be like, oh, that guy that they hung out with for a while until they split. Like that's kind of
Right.
how I thought he was going to be. So I just like didn't really pay attention to him or the Shinarans that much. And I was just like, let's just get to like the destination. Like that
Yeah.
was my like mindset. But I'm starting to realize, or in my reread, I've realized that Wheel of Time is kind of like a you have to be in the moment sort of thing and just treat
Right.
every moment like it's important, which is probably a good thing to do in life in general. So
That's true.
thank
That's
you,
very
Robert
true.
Jordan, for that lesson.
There's so many named characters and named things that you
It's
can
over
get.
a thousand, right?
Yeah, and some of them have very minor, almost forgettable roles, but most of them are do come back to the story in some way. So it's important not to forget a name, at least like not to write it off, at least I should say.
I want Master Gill to come back on that topic.
Master Gil, he's one of the better innkeepers, and he's a bigger innkeeper, which is important.
You're like, I'm not telling you anything. And yeah, I mean, it's funny, just like I feel like a big thing for me is the friendships and like all of them being mad at each other still just like bums me out.
Right.
But other than that, like it's a solid beginning.
I think one thing I was gonna say is about that, like the fight with like Rand and Matt and Perrin. It's kind of a weird sort of, I don't know, it feels weird because Rand is trying with the whole thing that he's doing is trying to help Matt. You know, that's the thing he wants to do before he rides off into the sunset, you know, because he channels and he doesn't want to be around them and he goes mad. But um trying to get them now to realize that he actually, you know, he wasn't being, you know, he was just being a jerk to get them to like be cool with him leaving. And you know, him just like now being kind of isolated. It's like he
but
wanted
also
this.
stuck with them.
Right. And he keeps thinking about like, you know, he can't ride with them. He feels kind of alone in that way. And it's this, you know, again, it's just a sad sort of state for him to be in.
Yeah.
And also kind of,
And like
you know,
Ingtar's the only one who'll talk to him, which makes him
right.
look even more like lordly than he like
Right.
is trying to. It's like he just
And
came in.
Inktar is all kind of like, I don't know, like very vaguely, like, I don't know, keeps talking to Rand in these ways that kind of indicates that he knows Rand's like important. And, you know, Rand hates that because he doesn't want to be treated as anything other than just like a member of this team. Like he's not a lord. He's not anyone important as far as he's concerned. We basically kind of have that sort of trajectory for this beginning here where they're basically running the horses to death to try and keep up with Fain. But then they end up eventually realizing that they're not going to catch up with them. Not at that, not in, you know, without killing their own horses and like running their own people ragged. So they slow down and then end up kind of like doing a sort of interval, sort of like walking the horses to like running and trotting them again. But you know, it's one of those things where I love the details that you get in these chapters. It's just he's so knowledgeable. Robert Jordan's so knowledgeable. At least in my mind, some of the stuff you can just kind of write off. But like the idea he can continually brings up this stuff about don't run your horses to death. Like some books that I've read kind of just forget about the horses and like the actual reality of traveling long distance, especially without it's, you know, he talks about the fact that they have like so much stuff in tow and how realistic it is, can they keep up at that pace. So
I mean, as
yeah.
a kid, I was very shocked to find out that horses do in fact get tired. I thought they could just go forever from like
Right.
the way it is in stories. So yeah, it is pretty
They do
cool.
go forever. I mean, like they can run for a lot longer than humans, obviously. But I think another reality is like, I think, is it Uno? It's either Uno or Huron, but one of them finds like leavings or droppings from the horses that the Dark Friends are using to kind of determine they're heading. And that's kind of when they start to realize, I think, that they're not going to be able to catch up with them. And so they kind of realize like they have to kind of change tactics a little bit and just kind of maintain a speed in order to eventually catch them.
It's weird. It's almost like they're being led somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that plays out in this in these chapters that I think you're supposed to read into. At least when we get to the scenes where they get to the village, which I guess we can go there.
Yeah.
Because there's that first village, right, that they get to. Let me make sure I'm not going to get this wrong. Because they go to 2 villages, correct?
Yes.
The first village.
First one's empty, right? And then the second one is full of dead people, or like some dead people, but a lot of them are missing.
Right.
And they all kind of like start going around trying to figure out what happens.
That's what's crazy. Like I feel like we get the kind of normal sort of like the Trollocs eat people, obviously, and they don't outright kill the people. They usually will maim them or like injure them so that they can easily take them on, because they need food to travel. So like it's kind of a horrific sort of reality there with Trollocs doing this sort of thing. But then you also get in the next village, I think that's kind of how it plays out. The first village, we just see a bunch of murder. I think we also see the 2 Shienarans there, right? Mm-hmm. So we see 2 Shienarans that we assume are the Dark Friends that help break Fain out of the Shienaran Keep, or the Faldar Keep. But they can't determine that, obviously, because they're dead and they've been flayed. So
they don't know who they are.
Right. So they just they basically figure out that the bodies or the names are Chengu and Nidao. But I do think that they can't find any proof that they were actually Dark Friends. And so they could have just been captured by the Dark Friends. So they give them a proper burial. So that's kind of, I think, where we get in that first village. And then we go to the second village where they find, and I think before we go there, there's like a thing where Uno is seeing like this figure in white, a female in white. I don't know if you recall this part, but it looks like so in there's like in a window, I think Uno sees it and he's like, I see somebody up there. It looks like a woman up there in white. And, everyone freaks out, goes to check, and turns out it might have just been curtains blowing in one of the open windows. But he swears he saw it, and, no one doubts him or anything necessarily, but, they don't see anything. But I think it's of note because he sees that woman elsewhere as well. So it's something to consider, I think. I think they want you to pay attention to this woman in white. So it's just kind of a thing to note. So then we get to this other village, which is also abandoned. And so they search it again, and they search this new village, and they find a building, or Rand walks into one of the buildings, and he gets trapped in this weird vision that happens over and over again, which is, I don't know. I don't know exactly what to make of this at this point, like, in my read of this book. If I'm thinking from my initial thoughts of this, but
my thoughts were, did he time travel or like step through something where he like I don't know, like I was like, because I still like at this point don't quite understand why it's called the Wheel of Time, which I know maybe is like silly, but like I don't know like why the time part's important.
Right.
And so I'm like, oh, maybe he like found some like weird ripple and like stepped through it, or he's like going crazy. But it seems like it's like pretty accurate to what actually happened in the village. So I'm like, did he time travel? That's my thought. That was like what I was just like, that's what I think he did.
It's so cool because like I think when I first read it, I was like, wait, is this like a typo in the book? Because it just kept repeating the same thing over again, but there were different lines in between to let you know it was like, part of it. But this same scene where this dad is assumingly the dad is like cutting meet for the family's dinner, and the kids are there, and seemingly somebody breaks through the door. Looks like probably a Trolloc, a Murdral or something, and the dad turns and screams. Essentially, is what happens. And Rand sees that over and over again, and every time he goes back to the beginning of that, he sees flies all over the room that continue to like grow in the amount of flies that are there, and it's just really creepy. And and basically at the end of it, there's like 6 dead flies that he finds, and I guess he snapped out of that dream loop or whatever. But it does seem to tie into what actually happened there. And I don't know if we're supposed to, like you said, like it could be something about a weird snap, like sort of like freeze frame of the wheel somehow spinning right there over and over again. But it's pretty weird, and I'm trying not to give any spoilers or anything. But honestly, like I don't know that I really remember why. So, I mean, it could be explained, but I mean, it's definitely a peculiar thing that happens that I think is meant to be pretty creepy. And
I feel like the only thing I could say is maybe like it's like a hint of Rand's like abilities that he doesn't know about or something. Like I don't know.
right. Well, there is that moment. There's that moment where he, in the way he's able to get out of the dream, is that he sees some light, some figment of light that he reaches to, and it feels warm. And that's seemingly the sort of stuff that he was thinking when he first channeled in the last book. So maybe it is something to do with the one power.
And he just like keeps like accidentally doing things. That's like the only thing I can think of.
I think that probably is it, but I'm sure we'll get more information as we go on. That's how that chapter ends. And like at the end, we find that a Murdral has also been staked to a door. And if you remember, Murdrals are pretty fearsome fighters, even for someone like Lan, who's as far as we know, one of the strongest swordsmen in the series. And so the idea that someone could stake one to a wall is kind of scary.
That's not really explained either, I don't think. Like how that Murdral came to be in that predicament. I think
we do get somewhat. I don't think they directly say, but I think it's alluded to in the next chapter. Or the next chapter.
You can explain it to me. This is probably one of the parts of this book that I remember being the most confused about in both readings of it. So
there's a few things that are like this where it's just kind of unique in the storytelling, and I got confused for sure reading it the first time through.
Yeah, I think it's like one of those moments where it's like this is like where it steps out of being like just a fantasy book and being Wheel of Time, and you forget, you get like lulled into like a sense of like I know what's going on, and then it changes in like a weird way, and then you're like, okay, never mind. I don't know what's going on.
It kind of builds these dynamics that are super interesting that you could probably just stay in that storyline, but then they throw in something like this weird repeating dream thing that is kind of creepy, and you still have these other dynamics, the character development that's kind of, I guess you don't get much character development in here in this first chapter, but we do we kind of set the stage at least for how the main characters are feeling and as they start this adventure, and how weird it might end up getting.
And then in the next chapter, I guess kind of after this, Rand has a conversation with Ingtar where Ingtar kind of informs Rand that he is second in command, which he doesn't really like, and like to add salt to the wound, Rand's wound. Ingtar gives him the dragon banner.
Yeah. And he's super. I hope we get a good look at that in the show. I think we kind of see it in a flashback in one of the episodes. This is one, like, because Rand had already been complaining about his clothes, which Moraine had replaced. And he like I think he like screams when he realizes that like he doesn't have any of his old clothes. Like he thought he had packed some, but apparently Moraine got to his pack and replaced it with a bunch of fancy coats. And Inktar is just like, well,
Control.
once we find the horn and we get to some, amazing like heroes banquet, at least you'll be dressed for it. It's just like Rand is so frustrated with this. But yeah, I think this revelation that that Moraine's still kind of in the background, even though she's not there, he still is like, she's manipulating this somehow.
Mhm.
And I'm not fully out from under her, I guess her puppet strings in a way. I think he thinks about it like that, like he's being guided by them, even though it seems like he might not, it seems like they gave him a free reign, but really he's kind of just doing exactly what they want, which I don't know I don't know if that's actually true as far as what we know as the reader, but that's how he sees it clearly.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, she just gave him something that might help him out if he gets in trouble.
Right.
I feel like that's like all I don't know. I feel like with Moraine, I don't think that she's like ever had the intention of controlling Rand or any of
Right.
them, really. I think her thing is just like protecting them and like keeping them from turning evil as far as control
Right.
goes.
Yeah. I kind of think that's true. I mean, I think to a certain extent, she does that. Yeah, she definitely wants to protect them, but she does want to guide them to where they need to be, but she doesn't want to necessarily dictate where that is or what that has to be. And I don't think Rand sees that. I think Rand thinks that they have a plan in mind. And I think we get to it here when he's looking at the actual dragon banner and Perrin and Matt come and see that that's what he's doing. And Matt in particular freaks out about this. And he's just like, of course, you're not only, dressing up like a lord, you're now pretending to be the dragon reborn. And so Rand confesses that Moraine told him that he was a dragon, and that but Rand believes that he's being set up as a false dragon. But then Matt and Perrin are wondering, well, can you channel? Why would they try to set you up as a false dragon if you can't even channel? And he admits that he can channel, which Matt does not take very well. But he does sort of feel like, he feels a little differently when he realizes that Rand decided to go on this adventure mission to find Fain, basically to help him with the dagger mostly. But he still at the end of the day was kind of like, yeah, but you should have just left us and gotten far away from us because, you're going to go mad. The old fears of male channelers are still pretty deep within Matt. But I do think Perrin's read on this is a lot. I don't know. I feel like Perrin would be like me. I've always been very similar minded to Perrin, and I think initially he's just like, I mean, that kind of sucks, and if that was me, I would probably try to run away from it and run as far as I could, but maybe you can't. And he just kind of leaves it like that, which is kind of for Perrin how he actually feels about the wolf thing. But I've always thought it was weird that Matt couldn't identify with Rand at all, seeing as he had that madness from the dagger within him.
You think like Matt with the dagger though is like, I don't think he understands what's happening to him.
Yeah.
I don't think that he like has like any like idea about what's going on. Like I think that he kind of is just like, why is everyone fussing about me?
Right. I think it's weird though, but I think the one thing I've always thought about when you think about Rand as a character, and I think you get, especially him knowing he's a Chandler specifically, but the fact that he's the Dragon Reborn too, but the idea that like he's got two best friends that can, if anyone else, obviously, like maybe if there were other male channelers, they could identify with Rand in some way, but I feel like anyone else, Matt and Perrin are probably like the best people to talk to about like the idea that Perrin's got this power that he's like afraid of. I think would be something that Rand could talk to about his own situation. and the idea that he might go mad. I think it's something that that Matt could talk to him about, considering that he could, I guess, go insane any day, begin by the dagger ultimately like consuming him, or that power still being there within him to that would actually overtake him. So it's always been weird that, I mean, but again, they're children, I guess that's what you're supposed to think, so they don't see that stuff.
My read of it, though, at least, was that like Perrin and Matt understood why Rand was being an asshole, like back at
Yeah,
Falmara. Like they're
yeah,
like, okay, like that makes sense. Like he's not just like being like a pompous like lordling and like pushing them away because he thinks that he's like better than them, but more so that he was trying to like protect him in an immature and stupid way.
right,
Or
right.
protect them, whatever.
And Matt kind of was like, okay, I get it now, but why didn't you just go through with it? That's kind of how Matt goes on with it.
Yeah. And that's kind of the end of that chapter. And then we
Yeah,
catch up with Egwene and Nynaeve as they start their journey to Tar Valon.
I think we knew that they were going to end up going to Tar Valon, but this is the first time we get an Egwene chapter, I think.
I think so, yeah.
I think so, yeah. So we kind of get to get in her head after all the events of the first book for the first time. And we kind of see that I don't know, I think I kind of get that read on her that like she's so excited about going to the White Tower and learning, while we kind of see Nynaeve is very very hesitant to embark on this journey. What did you think about the kind of like, I guess we really we get they're traveling to the, essentially I think they get on the a riverboat to actually sail to Tar Valon, but on their travel from Shinar to that riverboat, they kind of have some kind of beginning sort of training with Aes Sedai there. I think we get Varen, which is we've seen her earlier. We also get Alana, which I don't know if we saw in the last book, but we have seen her in the show.
Yeah.
And then we get Liandrin, I think, and Alviarin is another. I think let me give the colors of the Ajas because those are important. Varen's brown Aja, Alana's green, and Alviarin is white, and Liandrin is red. So you get a sort of good, I think, a pretty fair representation of those Ajas and these characters. But yeah, what did you think of this?
I mean, for one thing, by this point, I find Liandrin kind of sketchy. So, like, I think with each of them, I kind of got the vibe that they were trying to figure out like what they could do and give them like a little bit of training, but like more so like see if they would want to be in their Ajas.
Right. Yeah.
And
you
like
kind of
it's
get
like
that they're trying to recruit a little bit.
yeah, because I don't know if it's in this chapter or if it's later, but like, or maybe it's like when they're in Tar Valon where they're like, I don't know, like someone says something about it being abnormal to be trained outside of the White Tower. So it kind of like, so maybe that's like coloring how I'm like seeing it. But it was fun just like seeing them kind of rotate through and kind of meet different Aes Sedai that are very different from Moraine, and
Right.
kind of see Egwene and Nynaeve's differing attitudes about it,
Yeah.
where like Egwene is just like really, really hype, and Nynaeve is like reluctantly just paying attention to them, but like doesn't really.
Begrudgingly, I think is
Yeah.
a good word too.
Yes. That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah.
I like the introduction of Varen, or at least not the introduction of a character, but kind of the way she trains and is able to get a rise out of Nynaeve, and then we can actually see that she can channel of her own sort of with her own ability, because I don't think we've seen her necessarily like actively channel up until this point.
No,
And
I don't think so.
I think we've gotten hints that that Egwene can, and I think we also see through these training montage essentially that Egwene can channel a little bit, or at least she's starting to get used to the like the rosebud opening up, that sort of thing. But it's slow going. But for Nynaeve, she has to be forced into like an anger state. And it seems like when that happens, I think she sets like blankets or something on fire.
Mhm.
And Perrin is able to, apparently Perrin basically just tells her, if you, because she's already, I think this is what you were alluding to, that they call anyone who's learned to channel before being taught by an Aes Sedai. So that would be Nynaeve, because technically when she reads the wind and all the things she was able to do, that I think we kind of
miraculous healings and stuff.
right. I don't think she was able to do it consciously, but she was channeling. And they call anyone who can channel but hasn't been trained, the Aes Sedai called them wilders. And so that's what they consider Nynaeve at this point. Not Egwene so much, because Moraine caught her before she had started channeling, so they were able to get a little bit of it, a little bit of training done. So yeah, I think that there's this thing with how the Aes Sedai set up their ranks. There's obviously like sort of like your entry level Aes Sedai, which you would call them a novice, and then there's their intermediate, which is the accepted, and then there's a full-blown Aes Sedai. And so Egwene would be going into the White Tower as a novice, but because Nynaeve has already begun to channel and she's pretty strong already, they actually want to just put her into accepted. And so Perrin is able to get Nynaeve angry by letting her know that if she isn't ready to be accepted, then she would be a novice, which being a novice is
clean toilets and stuff,
clean
right?
toilets and pots, and yeah, especially pots will be cleaned. And so that is able to like get her able to channel at least a little bit, or when she gets angry, she's able to channel there. But yeah, I enjoy this and this scene, and I think mostly we get a little bit of this dream sort of sequence, the dreaming with Egwene. One of the Aes Sedai, I think it's God, I can't remember her name. Anaya, maybe?
Yes.
And Aes Sedai, I think, tells Egwene that she can dream, which is essentially you're able to
rare ability. I cannot pronounce the name of like the dream world, but you can like travel in like a dream world where you can like interact with people and like travel to like see what people are up to.
I don't think I've ever said the word out loud. It's like Teleranriad. Yeah.
I'm excited to hear how they say it in the show.
Yeah, I don't think they've said it in the show. But yeah, this in that dream world, you can not only exist there with your own consciousness, you can sometimes dream as a dreamer. You can also dream foretellings. Essentially, you can see stuff that you'll find out actually is something that will happen or may happen. And so we do get, I think Egwene starts to dream a little bit, and she does see some stuff with Mat and Perrin and Rand. And I think she sees particularly something with Rand falling asleep. And
sees him disappear. Like he was like there and then he vanishes.
Right. Which will be important for the next chapter. But yeah, essentially she sees him disappear, and she also sees Balsamon. And strangely, Balsamon seems to see her too, which I don't think she's seen him before, right? I think this is the first time she has said anything about this guy. But obviously, Mat, Rand, and Perrin have all seen him in the last book. Mm-hmm. But that also means he might not be dead, which we assumed. I guess we never assumed he was dead because we see him in the prologue. But
that like to the characters that like confirms that he's not dead, or suggests maybe he's not to them.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I doubt Egwene was at the bad boy party.
The Dark Friend Social.
There you go.
And I guess the only other thing we kind of see in that dream is that Egwene notices a woman, and I don't know if they expressly say that she's in white, but it's probably the same. It's probably the same woman that Uno was seeing in those earlier chapters. But that's I guess I'm putting some stuff together because I think it makes sense. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all we get. So I mean, this chapter sort of ends with Egwene and Nynaeve getting to the River Queen boat, where they're going to set off for Tarval and start their full training.
Yeah, and Moraine does not get on the boat with them.
Right.
That's
Almost forgot about that. Moraine, Leandrin, and Perrin. They dip out. They decide not to go to Tarvalin, and no one knows where they went, but I guess we can assume they all went somewhere together, or at least maybe the other two followed Moraine, because I doubt Moraine would follow them.
Yeah. And we go back to see what the boys are up to.
Right.
And Rand wakes up with Huron and Loyal, and everyone seems to be gone.
Right. Rand goes to sleep in the void, which is a very, very healthy place of where you drop all your emotions into a flame, and when all your emotions are gone, then you can just exist happily. Well, not happily, just emotionlessly. And that's kind of like he just like it's an interesting thing because it's like it's kind of treated in this story as like a good thing, right? But it's like realistically he's turning himself into a robot when he goes into the void. But yeah, he goes to sleep there and wakes up somewhere else with Huron and Loyal with him, but no one else.
Well, they wake up in the exact same place, but everyone's gone.
Right. Yeah. It's a little different looking.
The colors are like off, right? Or it's like,
yeah, it's like the inverted color, and like Huron says the
like
trails,
they're in the 70s or something.
Right. It's like either they've gone into the future a bit, or they've something about the where they are. Huron feels like his sniffing ability is off, because it seems like he can't smell the scents, or the scents have changed or have been like weeks gone by that point or something like that. So you get a sense that they're kind of in a different sort of place, but somehow connected to the original place, because there is some sort of connection here and can gather from. I think we're supposed to assume that because I think we get do we get in this chapter where we start actually get pattern Fain, or is this the next one? I feel like we get pattern Fain in one of these. What was that chapter? Yeah, it was chapter 11. I think we skipped it a bit, but yeah, it's just because I think basically we find out that Pattern Fain killed a he's the one who killed the Murjaw, and he used the Shatter Logoth dagger to do it, which we again get another reason to be like that dagger was not very safe to be carrying around, because it can kill Murjaw.
Why did you take that?
I know. And but basically there's something off again with Pattern Fain. It's kind of he was already evil. He was kind of bad guy anyway, but something about the dagger has now corrupted him even more. And that's what Huron is smelling, because he keeps saying it's something weird, something awful, but it's a strong scent that he can follow.
And you can still smell like Fain in particular.
Right.
Even in the like weird alternate reality that they found themselves in.
Exactly.
It's kind of like the upside down and
oh yeah. Literally like things.
That. Except not definitely like gross.
There's like another man, where's this? Is it? I think it's an Amazon show as well. We watched basically like I can't remember, but like I wish I could remember the name. But essentially the story is a similar sort of thing. There's like a parallel world essentially that has some similarities but some strange differences kind of thing. And I think that's kind of what you're supposed to get from this place that they're at.
And the thing that happened is the three of them kind of just curled up next to a stone with markings on it.
Right. I think we kind of want to say that it's probably something to do with Rand, right? Rand doesn't really know how he could have done it, but he does go to sleep in the void, which has been a place where, at least in the previous chapter with Rand, he was in the void when he saw the light, and he reached for the light when he was stuck in that vision. So I think it's a similar, it's a way that he can maybe access the one power, even if he doesn't mean to necessarily. So you could maybe suggest, and maybe that's what I'm suggesting based on the context, that perhaps Rand did this and unintentionally.
Channeled in his sleep. Yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
thought. And like, I don't know. It's weird with the void because it seems like the void is like would be how he channels because it sounds so similar to like Egwene with the rosebud and learning to channel that
Right.
way. That like it seems like it's a similar kind of like search within and like
Yeah.
you'll find this like safe space and that's where the one power is. But it's
Yeah.
something that Rand learned to do from his dad before. It's just like a mindfulness technique.
Yeah.
Well, maybe Tam was preparing him for his destiny or something. I
Perhaps.
don't know. That's just like a thought because at this point you don't really know anything about like what Tam's been up to or if we'll ever see him again.
I mean, there is this thing. Well, we do know that Lan also uses this technique,
Mhm.
and I think we hear some other Shinaran maybe talk about it, but it does work. I mean, it's kind of a weird thing because it does. I don't think we suspect Lan has the ability to channel. I doubt he would, right? But he's able to do this, so yeah, it could just be like here's a way to kind of hone your senses so that you can get ample focus on something, and maybe that's how he's able to access it because he's got pure focus, and so he's able to drop all his distractions, and that's how you touch the one power from men maybe. um but
Maybe.
we'll see, who knows. But yeah, so they're kind of stuck there, and I think Loyal kind of has a little bit of an idea, or at least he seems to kind of be gathering some idea about where they are. But I think they kind of all note that this is kind of weird, and it looks like a strange place to be. And I think Rand does think that he might have done this, and so he tries to use the one power, I think, to send them back, but then that doesn't work. Um,
Yeah.
just to allude to a little bit, this is a weird sort of thing that they're in here. This isn't just I mean, I'm not going to get too far ahead, but this is definitely such a weird sort of place to be in. It's not something that people would normally be. you
Yeah.
know I think it would probably be an accident to ever come here. So I think we'll be in for a treat when we discover what's going on in this place. But yeah, I think Loyal has kind of picked on to the fact that this is a weird area, and I think he noticed some of the monuments and some of these things that it's like,
This
wait,
didn't
that
happen. Like it's like an
yeah,
alternate history too. Like
yeah,
it's
it's
like isn't there
interesting.
like a Trolloc statue or something?
Something like that, or like there's a statue of Arthur Hawkwing, I think, that they find
Oh, that wasn't destroyed.
that wasn't destroyed. Yeah, and but yeah, so I mean, it's weird. But at the end of the chapter, I think Huron does catch the scent of Pat and Fain, and so they follow it, and kind of Rand assumes the leadership role a little bit, and tells him and Loyal to take off after the horn, and mostly the dagger, right? But yeah,
It's a
so
lot easier to take on some leadership when it's only two people versus like
yeah,
a whole like legion. So
yeah. I feel like there's been a few instances in the first book where he takes charge. What obviously there's that first scene where they run from Shadow and Logoths, but there's also a few different instances where he takes charge, and he does so kind of naturally. But though he resists the position, if it's offered to him every time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this is like the first time in this chapter that he tries to channel actively for, by himself. I don't know how notable that is, but yeah, he does also note that he feels the taint, the corruption of the Dark One, which is again one of those things that I think Robert Jordan does really well in describing this use of the One Power. But yeah, I think I don't know. I guess we should leave it here and then pick up next week on with chapter 14, where we get back to Perrin and the rest of the team, Matt and Ingtar and Uno.
While in the real world.
Right. But yeah, I think this is kind of a good start in a sort of, like you were saying, the kind of thing about this book that isn't just a normal fantasy book. It's like you've got your adventure set up, right? And you could probably just follow the adventure straight through the track that you would expect. But Wheel of Time does always kind of take you on these wild rides before you get through that normal adventure story. But yeah, I'm kind of enjoying rereading this because there's so many good things that happen here. Or not good, interesting things. They're very terrible, actually, but it's interesting to read.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us on our 10th episode of The Great Honey. Find us on Instagram, Twitter as @GreatHoneyPod and The Great Honey on TikTok and The Great Honey anywhere you can find podcasts, as well as on YouTube. Kind of weird. Today, when we were recording, Spotify was down, and that was very surreal. But as long as it's working, we'll be there too.
Yeah.
And we'll be releasing new episodes every Friday-ish. Until then, see you around.
See ya.